just drop them in there. We have a glove by the sink. You put the glove on and then rinse everything off.
Enough bacteria to make them safe. And that's it.
And that kills the bacteria on the tweezers. Then you can also come back in and do a UV sterilizer. You can do that also, added measure. And with the pandemic, better safe than sorry. It doesn't hurt. But we provide you with the EPA. We don't have the UV sanitizer. Okay, so that's one. Can we? Yeah, this school does get cold. I'm not even gonna
I
lie.
understand we gotta keep our, adhesive glue at an average range.
Yeah, so if you've ever gone to get your lashes done and the rooms are cold, that's why. Your adhesive needs the life. We got to take care of it. Okay, I'll probably talk over this one too, because the volume's really low.
Welcome to the lash extension setup. This is going to be going over how to properly set up your lash table, your lash bed, your lighting, all so that you are able to give an awesome application for your client. So let's take a look at this tray and see what we need to properly set up. Some of this you're going to recognize from the lash extension kit video. But we've added a few items. First thing we want to make sure that we have is We want to make sure that our hands are always sanitized. We want to make sure that our hands are always sanitized when we're working. We also want to have a protective barrier over our lash tray. This is actually a dental bib, very affordable, and you dispose of it after each client. In between clients. We also, of course, have our masks. For sanitation purposes, to protect ourselves and our clients. Our lash shampoo, which is going to be used to clean our clients' lashes before we start the service. We have our lash shampoo bottles and our lash brush. We also have a water bottle. We also have a water bottle that is going to rinse shampoo off of our clients' lashes. Lash shampoo off of our clients' lashes. As well as some gauze to dry the client's lashes when we are washing our lashes. We now have our adhesive, which is the bond that we're going to use to be placing the eyelash extensions on the client. And we have our primer as well. This is what the client's lashes to properly cleanse her lashes, to remove any oils, dirt, or debris. Some people use both the lash shampoo or the primer, or some people will use one or the other. If a client comes in and her lashes are, maybe she has makeup, then you can definitely use lash shampoo. But if she comes in pretty clean, you could just also opt to just use primer. If you're going to use primer, you can use these little micro brush sticks, and this will help you to apply the primer. We'll also be showing you how to do both the lash path as well as applying the primer on your client's lashes. We've got our awesome iPads. Again, these are used to protect the client's bottom lashes. We have our dental mirror. This mirror helps you to see your lashes that you're doing on your client, making sure that you don't have any gaps, making sure that the lashes are not glued to the bottom of the other lashes, as well as not to the iPad. We've got our mascara wand. Again, we're going to use this to brush throughout the lashes, and we'll also give one to our client so that she can also brush through her lashes. In addition to our iPad, we also have tape. So sometimes even with these iPads, bottom lashes will kind of pop up. This tape helps to secure the bottom lashes, as well as you can use the tape to lift up the eyelid to help you lash better. You can also use the tape for the inner corners or the outer corners, but we will also be doing a taping technique video. So of course, if we have our lash supplies, we need to have our tweezers. Most people will use a curved and a straight tweezer. It will be your preference. Curve is usually used for isolation, and straight is used for pickup. But again, you have the option of using different types of tweezers for your application. This is our stone. This is a crystal stone, and you will be using this to place your dental, sorry, not your dental, but your lash glue. Okay. And of course, we definitely need some. So we have our classic lashes. We're using .15s. So that is a proper tweezers for your application. This is our stone. This is a crystal stone, and you will be using this to place your dental, sorry, not your dental, but your lash glue. Okay. And of course, we definitely need some. So we have our classic lashes. We're using .15s. So that is a proper
Okay, so when I begin recording, so good evening. It's just one person on campus. Some other people may join us soon, so it's kind of a small crowd. Those of you who've not met me, my name is Braden McGowan. I am the Director of Education, so I teach lashes, aesthetics, and cosmetology. I'm originally a hair colorist, but I also ventured over into lashes. So I was Nova Lash certified way back in 2011, the good old days, the dark ages of lashing, and we've grown a lot since then. So this afternoon, or evening rather, we're going to go over lash mapping, and then we'll go into hybrid application. So I know that at this point you've gone through classic application, you've gone through volume. After volume week, how are you guys feeling? Good, bad, indifferent, so-so?
So far, so good for me.
Okay.
I haven't done any volume application yet. I've just done like the theory stuff, but I guess good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with the volume application, what I can tell you is that it's going to be practice. You can watch any of the YouTube videos that you want, but no matter what, it's practice, 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 and hours of it. And even with me teaching volume now for a very long time, sometimes my fans are not always symmetrical, and sometimes I get them a little bit too big too. So don't strive for perfection, especially on your first week, because even with a lot of practice, it can still be difficult. But why I say that is because with our hybrid application, obviously we're mixing volume and classic application. So I'm going to start by presenting. We're going to go into lash mapping first, and then we'll go into the hybrid application because hybrid is not very long. Okay. So, and if you have any questions, for me, whenever I put this up, it basically makes it so that I can't see you guys. But if you have any questions, feel free to take yourself off mute, and you can ask anything at any time. So we're going to go over lash mapping, and I think this to me is probably something that's extremely important for you to understand because you're creating shape. This is where you're giving that special effect depending on someone's eye shape. So the sweep of your fan, and then what we're trying to create with our lash maps. And one thing that drives me crazy as someone who's a perfectionist about this, whenever you are a professional lasher, is when you don't map. And I know that after a while, maybe 5 or 6 years, it kind of goes away and you can do this in your head, but I can tell you that it makes it much more professional, especially whenever you're getting started if you map, because I don't like anyone to get confused. So why do we map? So it does, mapping your lash set prior to starting your service, it gives you guidelines and keeps your work organized. And whenever I say that, guidelines, especially now, whenever you're new and there are all these things kinesthetically going through your head, because you've got to think, I've got to isolate with this tweezer and I'm going to pull a lash with this tweezer. Well, then you also have to think about a number when it comes to the length of the extension that you're pulling. So this will also allow you to customize your work. So it's not cookie cutter. We're not doing a cat eye on everyone. It will greatly increase your accuracy. That's one of my biggest things, is because as you're building your speed, you really do need a roadmap that allows you to say, well, I'm going to put this here and this here. I'm going to work balance between each eye, but then sometimes you can get a little off whenever you're trying to get the feel for how wide across someone's eye is. And then it enables you as a lash artist to easily recreate a lash design. And what I mean by that, whenever I was opening up the lash lounge locations, they actually have what's called a lash code. So you could just take that code to anyone. But if you want to save your gel pads, if you want to write this on your consultation sheets, it's just important that you have a record of it so that you know what you did, and then if you want to make any changes, especially if she has some challenges, because sometimes they'll come back and especially if you want a little longer or heavier and they could feel them in the outer corners and inner corners, you'll notice that too, because they have allergies, they tend to scratch and they'll rip off these inner corners, and you probably need to make an adjustment next time. So just making sure that you know what you did so that you can replicate that on the guest, especially if they liked it, or make adjustments. So the considerations, first and foremost, is eye shape. And I know that you guys have that eye shape slide in Cengage, but then you also have that in your Novalash textbook. We do have to consider their eye shape, and there are a couple of important things that I'll go over, especially as it pertains to wide set and close set. The length, so how long we're going to go, and of course we stay within those length guidelines if we're here in the school, and we know that that is no longer with an extension, then how long. How much longer can we go than their longest natural lash? So for length, when we're thinking of that, what is our length rule?
I just know that I was told that like 13 millimeter is probably the longest you'll go, and you just kind of match that up with their natural lash and make sure it's like not too much over. But I didn't know the dimension or like measurement. No,
that's okay. So it's no longer than 4 millimeters, longer than their natural lash. And know that the lashes that you're using here have a mink cut, not a silk cut. If you're using a silk cut, they're going to be a little bit heavier because they're thicker through the body. So you may not be able to go even that much longer. Very important if we're protecting the integrity of their natural lashes. And then the curl. So of course here in your kits you get C curl, but there's C curl, D curl, and it's okay to mix curls depending on what the overall look that you're wanting to go for. The technique. So if we're thinking of technique, just there are only 3 of them. What are the 3 techniques that we have?
Awesome.
Yeah, perfect. And so when we're thinking of those, the technique, your mapping will play into that. And then of course their desired look. So how dramatic do they want to go? I think that for mapping, that where it's really most important is where you're wanting to focus your length or your emphasis, because you really can change the way that their eye shape appears. So we'll go through a little bit of the eye shapes, but this all lives in chapter 7 of your textbook. Now, why I put this little star crunch thing here, if that's what you want to call it, and says suggested reading chapter 7. This information always lives on your state board. And why I say that is sometimes the information seems a little bit antiquated because the book was written in 2003. However, they're going to ask things like, well, if someone has almond eyes, where should you place your short lashes or longer lashes? And it's not where we would think in modern times. It's what Novalash says. So I always like to point that out when I teach this. So it gives you these different types of common eye shapes: deep set, monoloid, hooded, almond, downturn, closed set, and wide set. And really, my biggest thing is just making sure that we are taking note of their eye, and then what we can do to enhance those features that look great. And then, of course, we want to take some attention away from things that might not be so flattering. So really, we're just trying to give them nature, but better than nature. And all of these slides do live in Google Classroom as well, so you can revisit. So deep set eyes. This, for most people having deep set eyes, it's simply an eye shape, but their eyes look larger and are set deeper in the eye socket, which creates the illusion of a more prominent brow bone. Now, I can put that out there as a definition, but I also want you to think if somebody has really deep set eyes, there are considerations that you have to make. So if they have a super prominent brow bone, but they have very deep set eyes, what do you think we can probably increase if there really is a prominent brow bone there? Length, right?
Like Celia kind of has 70% eyes, I would say.
Exactly. And so you can increase the length because you're dealing with more eye space. If somebody has these little tiny eyes and we put really long lashes on it, well, she's going to look like a bug, right? So you have to think about what's going to be appropriate with their eye shape. Monoloid, this is an eyelid shape that doesn't have a crease, so very, very thin, not a lot of that extra adipose tissue on the eyelid. And it says, of course, I had to put this in there, typically a facial feature of East Asian people. But what really doesn't look, to me, that doesn't look very flattering on this eye shape, because oftentimes it's kind of straight across or it can be slightly upward in the outer corner. If you put all of that emphasis and you do a cat eye on this, on that outer corner, what is that going to do to it? I mean, just think cause and effect. All of this Yeah, it's going to look heavy, right? Right. So you, because the eyes are already small and there's not a lot of lid space. And so then we're putting a whole bunch of emphasis out here and it's going to make it very heavy and weighted, especially if she's someone who likes to wear makeup and darker makeup. So those are conversations that you get in consultation. Now, if she said, I want a cat eye, and she's absolutely hell-bent on it, well, by all means do it. But I mean, if you can speak intelligently to eye shapes and length and curl, then it makes you seem more professional. And so it builds trust with the client. Hooded eyes. So we've all seen people with hooded eyes. This, I always think, I always think of my grandmother because poor thing, she's 82 and her she's never had that eye surgery, the blepharoplasty where they remove the fat, but her eyelids hang down on into her eyelashes. So here, honestly, these people are a really great candidate for like an L curl if they can handle it, because that L curl, that 90-degree angle, is going to push out and then give a little bit of length. What doesn't look lovely on them is a D curl. And why would that be? Yeah, exactly, because it curls back. And so think if they're opening that up and they'd be poking themselves. Okay, so just think rationally with this, what's going to work best for them, because what I don't like for you to do is give a guest this set. You know, you can always build upon something. You can't really take it away unless you want to do a gel removal or a banana peel on half their set, but make something that's buildable and doable for a guest, especially if they're a first-time client. And then an almond-shaped eye. So this one tapers to a point at the tear duct and at the outer eye. For me, if you have an almond-shaped eye, you can really do whatever you would like, because I think that the length is going to look lovely no matter what. It's just because there is that upturned appearance. If you put all of the length out here, sometimes that's going to drag it down, and most of the time they want to look more lifted. So this is where we would move into a situation more with what we would call like a doll eye or an open eye, so that it looks a little bit more balanced. But it's completely up to you. I'm letting you know it's always it's endless. Now, these next three that I go over, there are some rules here. And why I want to say that there are some rules here, because if someone has a downturned eye, and what that means, like what I tell people, if they're trying to think if this is upward, if this is straight, or if it's downturned, just imagine a straight line, a straight meridian line, like right through the pupils. And here, if this lands below that line, of course it's downturned. If it's above, it's upturned. Or if it's nice and balanced, it's straight. If they have straight or upward eyes, it's not a big deal. But if they have downturned eyes, what do you think our mission is, or our purpose here? What illusion are we trying to create? To lift it, right? And so what I see happen so many times when they do this, if you put a cat eye on this, what's it going to do? Weigh it down even more. Exactly. It's going to sag it down. So really what we're trying to do is shift that length towards the center. So this would be an open eye or a doll eye. Just making those considerations so that you know that you're trying to put your best foot forward and trying to camouflage a little bit of that downturn in the outer corners of the eye. And then close set eyes. So if you're thinking in traditional makeup, if we were measuring the circumference of the face, and we say what's a balanced face. So if you I forget that I'm gonna have to teach you how to measure, so I take my glasses on and off. But if you are balanced, as it were, if you take the width of one eye, that would fit 5 across from hairline to hairline. So it's one eye width here, one in between the bridge of the nose, here, and then from the outer corners of a hairline. That's a balanced face in traditional makeup whenever we're mapping. If they're close set, if you look at the bridge of the eye, and this is more narrow than the width of an eye, they're close set. And here, what am I wanting to do with a close set person?
I would say I would use a lot of lengths to kind of like balance it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
No, that's right. Yeah, you got it, because what you're wanting to do is give the illusion that they're farther apart. This is where you would use a cat eye, because you're wanting that length on those outer corners to visually pull them apart. That's why if someone had close set eyes, if you were doing, especially like a dark eyeshadow, would you ever put it here? No, right? That's where you would go in and put your lightness and brightness, because it's going to make them appear more open and more balanced. The next one is wide set eyes. So if we're just thinking about that space between the bridge of the nose, if it's wider than one eye width, those are people who have wide set eyes. And what I always like to say, you know, you probably don't want to say they're close set or they're wide set. I always made this joke, I'm like, girl, she's a hammerhead. She's coming in for, no. I like, if you know, you have to be funny with it, but they probably know that they have wide set eyes. And here, what we're trying to do is bring them closer together, right? So we're going to focus the length near the pupil or inside the
So you
iris.
probably wouldn't tell your client, like, oh, no, I'm sorry, you have wide set eyes, like, I can't do that style.
Yeah.
Kind of trying to, like, frame it differently. I don't know, I didn't know.
I'd be like, ma'am, you look like E.T., and so I don't think we can. No, you probably wouldn't say it like that. It's just the most flattering shape for you, or what I think would give you the most balance and symmetry is, you know, use words like that. Think about we're balancing, because I hate the word ideal. Everyone's like, well, that oval face shape is ideal. Please. I've seen people with oval face shapes that look like dogs, and I've seen people with oblong faces that look gorgeous. So, I mean, I just, you have to get away from some of that archaic language. I just say balance, symmetry, you know, for bringing the best features forward. So everybody's beautiful in their own right. Something beautiful about everyone. So length considerations, rules for length, and we went over this. My biggest thing, when you're measuring your client's longest lash, usually it's going to live somewhere here in that point of interest, which is going to be on the outside of the iris. When you're measuring that, please do not exceed more than 4 millimeters, and then inner corners. What drives me crazy, and if you do this, you will reap the benefits, or she will reap the repercussions, I guess I should say. If it's longer than 9 millimeters here, are there people who can support that? Yes, but few and far between. Really, this is 9 and below, because if you put that 9 or 10 or an 11 on the inner corner, as soon as it starts to hit, what's she going to do? Pick, right? She's going to pick and rip her lashes out. So it just, the best practice, especially when you're learning, do not exceed a 9 millimeter on the inner corner, and then using somewhere between 4 and 6 different lengths. And that's simply because it's going to make it look more natural. I know that there's been this push here lately where they're doing, you know, 14s all the way across, or for the love of God, 16s all the way across. And I'm like, she looks like a Cupid doll. So we want something that looks natural, right? So 4 to 6 lengths whenever we're going through. It really does help you balance too, and especially if you're trying to add some more fullness with those shorter and mid lengths. But I think that 4 to 6 lengths in a set is usually a pretty good idea. And then the biggest thing with curl, and you guys learn this in Lash 101, consider the client's natural lash. Because this is the thing. If we think best scenarios for a B or a J curl, well, you guys don't have those. Those are the softest curl. Most of the time we use those for bottom lashes. They're going to be very, very slight. Those were things that were around back when I learned how to lash. C and D, I think, are the most popular. And then, of course, an L curl if they have straight or downward pointing lashes, because that's going to be the best attachment. So you have to make that decision based on your client's desire, but then also what's going to give you the best retention with their natural curl. And then techniques, really all of them can be used in mapping. Classic, volume, hybrid. It's just that it will affect the density or fullness. But all of them can be used with any of the choices of mapping that we're going over. And I only put 3 in this, but I mean, they're pretty endless. And then their desired look. So really, as I've said before, your aim here is to draw attention to the most desirable features of a woman's eyes, and then draw away attention from their imperfections. You're trying to create balance. And so I don't care how you map, just make sure that you do map. You at least have to attempt it, because it does make a world of difference. So did you have a question for me? And everyone good at home before we go into the different types of mapping?
I'm good.
Okay, I would say I can't see y'all, so you'll have to come off mute and talk to me. So a natural eye. This one, I don't think that you can really go wrong. It's for a natural eye, this is a safe zone, and this is showing it with very, very short lengths. So if this is their first introduction, but with a natural eye, any type of natural mapping, what you're really doing is mimicking the natural growth of a lash. So it's going to start short in the inner corner at your longest point of emphasis or your point of interest. That will be your longest length, but you really only have one section with that longer length, and then it's going to taper back down a couple of lengths. So this is great for the first time lasher. This is great for the person, like during consultation, if I'm trying to get a feel for their technique, I'd say, well, hey girl, have you ever worn lashes before? And it's a no. Well, have you ever glued on strips before? Well, that means that they're probably going to be they're probably not going to like it if I do a classic application. But if she says, yeah, I use the eyelash curler and a couple of coats of mascara, well then yeah, she's a classic girl, right? So you have to use that in conjunction with your mapping to decide how it's going to best fit her. Because where you will make a mistake is thinking that everybody wants these long 15mm lashes, and then the first thing they say, Braden, can we cut them? No, ma'am, we can't. Yeah, and oh God, a young lady did come in because she put 15s all the way across on her, which looked ridiculous anyway, but she cut them. She took little scissors and cut them, and I'm like,
it reminds me of one of those baby dolls where all the lashes are the same length.
That's what I said. It's a Cupid doll. It's awful.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's it.
Yes.
I haven't seen a Cupid doll. So
yes.
I think of one of those little baby dolls.
Yes, that's what it is. I'm
That's
like,
funny.
just ridiculous. But this one, I just give you some scenarios, as I said before, suitable for all eye shapes. It mimics the look of natural lashes. And it's really great for people who are new to lashes because it's going to be like their natural but better, especially if you don't go much longer than their natural lashes. Just get them a little bit of fullness. And then the next one is going to be the doll eye. So the doll eye or open eye, and then I've also seen this called the upward eye. But here, what you're trying to do is accentuate that center line. So this is what you would use on somebody who was downturned, because what you're doing is putting the focus back towards the center of their eye. So it's going to visually lift this. So with kind of the hallmark of a doll eye, an open eye isn't quite as drastic. A doll eye is a little bit more drastic in the length. So you will sometimes see a jump. So you can see this goes 7, 9, and I've even seen them do like 10, 13, 15. I'm not a big fan of you guys jumping because what can start to happen until you find your way and you can fill it in with the medium and shorter lengths, it does start to look a little jumpy. And I don't mean wispy. We're not talking spies. It looks like a mistake. So best practice here is to start with probably like an 8 in the outer corner, and then you have that really steep jump right to the center, and then it's a steep jump back down. So with all of these, you have to be thinking of where you're placing it, and that comes with practice. Because my biggest pet peeve is you go in to map someone and you have their eyes closed. Can you tell where their pupil and their iris is if their eyes are closed? No, you can guess, right? But until you find your way, there's nothing wrong with marking that. We used to have people mark it with a pencil. You can also have them open their eye and then just mark it on your gel pad at the bottom if you need to see. But you need to know where that lives. That's a big indicator of where we need to put our length and where it's going to live. So this, great for guests with wide set eyes. And then, so because it's going to put them in, creates that visual balance that draws them together. And again, it can be used with any of our applications. I think it honestly looks best with a volume application. If you do an open eye with a classic application, unless you're really, really cramming those in, like lashing every available lash, you don't get the full effect. And then a cat eye. So I think everybody and their mom knows what a cat eye is. And I think that everybody, it's just been so popular for so long, especially because this is the way that most strip lashes are manufactured. But you can see it's always going to be shorter on the inner corner, and then it gradually tapers up. Now, once you get right to the center line, that's where the length gets longer and longer and longer until it extends to the end. I do like the way this looks, especially if it's on the appropriate eye shape. So it's not that I'm knocking it, because it's just everybody wants to do a cat eye. The only thing that I beg of you, if all the length lives out here, right? And so if we're saying that we're going to go from an 8 to a 14, or even if you're going to go from a 9 to a 13 and make your sections larger, talk to me about these natural lashes out here on the outer corners.
They're heavy.
The natural lashes.
Oh, the natural lashes,
Mhm.
they're probably getting like put under stress.
Yeah.
I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they can be heavy. You're putting all the length there. So just make sure that you're taking that into consideration, because just because she can support a 14 here, where the lashes are naturally longer, if you get out here and she has these wimpy little things, we need to reassess this. We need to make it more of a natural eye. Okay. So I'm all about the safety of the lashes, because in this business this long, I have seen people's lashes absolutely decimated by bad lash extensions. So I want you to lash responsibly. And here, great for people with closed set eyes, as we said before. It will pull the eyes apart. So, and they're great for guests with a very large eye space. So if people do have a lot of that room, a very prominent brow bone, or even a deep orbital socket, deep set eyes, this is a great choice for them. Okay, and then emphasis and consideration. So whenever I kept talking about emphasis, what we're thinking of is that we're emphasizing that area on the outside of the iris. So if someone is looking straight forward at you and you draw that 45-degree angle to the outside of the iris, not the pupil, the iris, which is the colored part of the eye, that is where generally the longest lashes are going to live in your set. So now that's if you're doing a natural set. So that's where you would always measure for your longest length. But as I said, if you're doing an open eye, then maybe whenever you're right in here, all of your length is going to live between iris to iris, and then longest right here at the pupil. If you were doing a cat eye, it's going to be from that 45-degree out. You can start your length increase right at the pupil. And then if you were doing a natural eye, it's just going to taper to visually match what she already has.
Are you looking at that straight on, or are you using that like how it's like going against the nose?
No, so you look at her straight on, and then you draw that 45-degree. And I used to teach people to take a pencil whenever you're trying to find it. So it's not wrong. Like if you take a makeup pencil, you can lay it right there, and then you can just make a little tick mark right here so that you could mark that and you can see it on the gel pad. But that's usually the one that you mark first. Or if she has her eyes open and you're propped over, you can make a line for your point of emphasis or your point of interest there. So let's summarize this. So what I always like to say whenever I'm teaching this, it's a lot of stuff. It's a whole lot of information. And I only went into 3 different mapping styles there, but they are endless. And I want you to master those kind of bread and butter basics before you go out and say, well, I want to do a Kim K, or I want to do a wispy. Well, what does that mean, right? You have to understand where you're putting the length, why you're putting it there, and what you're trying to emphasize with the different eye shapes and sizes. I think my biggest pet peeve, and that's why I put that on here, do not fall into that cookie cutter pattern. Not everybody needs cat eye. It's not great for them. Sometimes it's not healthy for their lashes. And if they see that you are actually going in and you are making this custom look, you are doing something that is different than everybody else is doing, even if that means adding, just like a little bit of pop of color out here. Because there's nothing that says that you can't have fun with them. You just have to judge your client. If it's a PTA mom, am I going to put colored lashes on her? Probably not, right? But if it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month and we put a little bit of pink in there, that's fabulous, right? So thinking about just thinking about that and making sure that you are mapping, that you have a plan. Otherwise, what you're doing, and I know that you're brand new, right, to this, especially if you hadn't been introduced to lashes before. I'm going to tell you, it's a whole lot easier if you have a roadmap than to just kind of go at it. Because that can be, because it can be a little overwhelming when you sit down, you're like, oh crap, what am I going to do? So this at least is going to give you numbers. It's going to give you links. I just mapping every guest every time. My biggest pet peeve is when people don't map.
I don't think I've ever gotten, like, as I've gotten my lashes done, now I'm like wondering, like, if cat eye is my best. You know?
Is it?
I'm like, I don't know now.
Well, it does. It'll make you kind of re-examine and you can see the work, because everybody goes to a different type of school. I've been teaching lashes for a very long time. And so what I found out very quickly is that people fall into comfort zones. And it's just, well, I'm going to put a cat eye on everybody. Or the girls who give you, 45 minutes for an infill or a refill. And you lay down on the bed, they put a little alcohol on your lashes to prime them, and then get after it, right? So everybody does it differently, but I feel like that this kind of sets you apart, and it's going to make your work look a lot better and keep you really organized as you're learning. Yeah. So I only put those, as I said, let me stop sharing the screen. So as I said, I only put those 3 options in, but there are a ton of them. Those were 3 from Bella Lash, and then when you're mapping, you're not going to find that anything deviates that much. I know we have some that say kitten set. Well, if they want you to do something with kitten mapping, it's like a cat eye, but it's a little bit more demure. Like the length isn't as much, and a little bit flatter. So let me go in. Okay, so we'll move into hybrid application, and hybrid application. There's not a lot to it because we've already gone through volume application and classic application. So we'll go through that slide. Before we go into hybrid, what questions might you guys have here or at home?
There is an online assignment that's maybe a little unclear. Can I ask about that?
Uh-huh.
Okay. It was from week 2, I guess technically. It was the eye shape analysis. They just didn't really explain it very well. And they said do it on the mannequin, but like the mannequin doesn't have a lot of shape to it. It feels very like flat. So
So for that, honestly, what I would do for eye shape analysis, and this is where you can, you can't work on a person, obviously, because you're not under a licensed instructor, but you can do an eye shape analysis on yourself. So you can look at the camera and say, this is what I'm doing. If I'm here on campus, I just always have everyone read chapter 7. And then most of the time, I would have them choose a partner and do an eye shape analysis on 3 or 4 people. So you can do it, but sorry, that distracted me. You can do it. You're okay, girl. I just almost blushed. I was like, you're okay. I saw that in the background, and I'm like, oh,
That was so funny.
oh, the good old days of Zoom. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to get my composure. I beg your pardon. Oh goodness. Oh, fun. But yeah, so you can do that eye shape analysis on yourself and then practice on other people as well. But make sure that you're reading chapter 7, because that textbook, I know that information seems antiquated, guys, but seriously, all of the questions about lash extensions, eye shape analysis, any of that stuff that are on the state board, they come directly from that textbook. So just making sure that we have that out there. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into hybrid application now that I'm calming down a little bit. Goodness gracious. I don't know if I can always be graceful under pressure, guys. Okay. So let's go into hybrid application. And as I said, this is not, it's not a very long or extensive presentation, simply because you've already learned the other two. Okay, so hybrid lash application, and I can't make this last longer than it actually is, because it is just an intro to it, but I do want you to have been introduced, because I think that word gets thrown around a lot. But just think about it. When we say hybrid, what does that mean?
A mix.
A mix, right? It's just a mix of two different things.
50-50 mixes.
Mm-hmm. And people teach it differently. I'll go into that as well, just so that everyone has an idea. But hybrid lash application, it really is classic lash extensions and volume fans. And we say in a 50-50 ratio. Now, I will tell you that other people, other teachers, other companies, they've taught it as a 60-40 ratio. It really just depends on your thought on this. But I think to truly be hybrid, it probably does need to be 50-50. It is going to give you more fullness than classic, but it still is natural. And it's a really great, for me, a hybrid application is a really great way to introduce your client to volume, because volume is going to cost more money, right? So it starts out cheapest is classic, somewhere in the middle is hybrid, and then most expensive is going to be volume. And I think that that's kind of the way to go, especially if you get really good at making your fans. So if we're thinking about this, I always say it's not very difficult if we think of this in steps. It's always going to be consultation, right? We always start with a consultation, then we go into our preparation, then our application, whatever it is, and then our closure, where we go over everything. So preparation, it's a lash bath or primer, and then the taping method, you can use gel pad and tape, or tape only. My biggest thing, I'm not a big fan of you guys just using the gel pad. And the reason is, even with the ones that we have that aren't super sticky, it just doesn't give you the same amount of control, especially when you're learning. So please tape first. Now, some people tape. I just noticed this too, and I had to help a young lady whenever I was here on Saturday. But she was having the hardest time getting the lashes down with the gel pad, and then she was wanting to put tape on top of it. It's not incorrect to put tape down first and then just use the gel pad as a foundation. Okay, so
We don't put tape on top of the gel pad.
you can, but if they have those little teeny lashes, do your tape first. So, it's that soft X, do your tape first and then put a gel pad on it. Because the gel pad's really only there so that whenever you put your tweezers down, that provides a barrier. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you can do it either way, but just make sure that we're not doing gel pad only, because especially with this humidity in Texas, that thing can slip, and then you've glued top to bottom, and she's scared, I'm scared, you're scared, I'm not scared.
It's also just easier to wipe off like any glue
Mm-hmm.
or whatever with the tape.
Yeah.
So
When I think of the application here, and this is not going to differ at all from the way that you guys should be applying your lashes, we have to think of balance. So really, the best way is to put your classic lashes in first. And the reason is because that's going to stiffen the lashes, and it makes it easier for you to tape back, and it makes it easier for you to isolate, especially whenever you're putting in fans. So if you were doing, let's say that you were doing a cat eye, what that would look like is you do a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. One eye, so that many on one eye, that many on this eye. Then you start to fan them to get them to cure. Then you do that many on this side, that many on this side. We need to make sure that we're working balanced in between. Okay, and so once you get those in, then it's very, very easy to isolate because they stiffen the natural lashes. And then you can apply your fans with a little bit more ease. So it's usually 3 or 4 passes of, and when I say a pass, I mean that's going over each eye once, 3 or 4 passes of classic, and then 3 or 4 passes of your volume fans to complete. And with this, it makes it a little easier because once you get to the end, the way that you check them is, of course, we're going to take the tweezers and go all the way down to the skin, making sure that there are no stickies and everything is separated. But the reason I like doing the application like that as if you're squinting and looking at it and it looks like there are gaps, is it easier to fill in gaps with Classic or a fan? A fan, right? So if you do see some gapping at the end and you're already on that application, now what will slow you down, and you will only do this one time and say, why on earth did I ever do it, is if you try to do a Classic and a fan and a Classic and a fan and a Classic and a fan. Yep. So you got to choose which one you want to do. I have always preferred to do Classic first. And I think that's the preferred method just because it makes isolating easier. But I remember this young lady, and I had gone over this, and she had her .05s and her .15s, and she'd pick up a .15 and put on an 8mm, and then she'd sit there and make her fan. But I was like, and 7 hours later, and she's still not done. And I'm like, no, never again. And she was in tears. The client was over it. You know what I mean? And I just, well, you know, I
couldn't imagine the pressure.
Yeah, I just don't want to set up anybody up for failure like that. So really, and this goes for any application, of course, not just for a hybrid application, but you have to make sure that they are thoroughly cured. So what that means, your fan is going to be your absolute best friend, and you take that fan and get it right down to her lash line. The reason is because we're curing the bonds. So those bonds have not cured completely. What they do is they dry on the outside, but not so much on the inside. And we don't want them to shock cure if she goes out to humidity. Shock curing is like a Cadbury egg, right? Or a Lindor truffle. It means that it's hard on the outside, but still a little gummy on the inside. And no matter how many people tell you there's not formaldehyde in this, I'm going to tell you a little secret. Formaldehyde is an off-gas product of all cyanoacrylate. That's just science. So if you don't thoroughly fan these, not only are you not going to get the retention, the first time that she gets them wet, what's going to happen? It's going to burn. Yeah. So make it
possible to happen even a day later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because I was wondering, mine burned a little bit. So I was like,
No, because you take you'll see in your book, they used to use the multifunction machine, and they would take the aerator blower thing, and they would go super hard and heavy for a few times right at the base to dry them. Now we have fans, we have nano misters, right? But yeah, get that fan right to the base. And I mean, it's 2 to 5 minutes per eye after the application. We really want those dry.
Is that after the application of like Classic Lash and then fan, and then do your volume fans and then fans, so like in between each step?
Oh yeah, and you need to be checking it at least 3 to 4 times for between your set, but fan them often, and that's just a finish off fan. Like at the very end, this is like, think of that, so like blow drying it.
Throughout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to be fanning throughout to start that curing process. Because if you're using enough adhesive, you're going to get stickies. You just need to make sure that you go back and remove it. And this I think was actually a picture that one of the girls did here, because I tried to get pictures.
That's a cute set.
Mm-hmm. But very natural with more fullness than a traditional Classic set. So you can see, I mean, there's still a little bit of natural gapping and wispiness in this. It's very soft. And I don't think that anybody would say, oh, well, look, she's wearing lash extensions, right? But this gives her more than what a Classic would. So application, it can be used with any mapping style, but the best thing that we've said, I'm going to go over and over and over again. What is the max length rule? 4 millimeters, no longer than 4 millimeters longer than their natural lash. And for volume fans, it drives me bonkers because I see these beautiful sets all the time. There are max D rules. And if you don't remember them, go back and revisit the volume application slide from last week. If we are using a 0.07, no larger than a 4D fan. If you are using a 0.05, no larger than a 60 fan. Now, when you're out of school, you can technically go up to an 8D safely if they have, with a 0.05. If they have really strong lashes, you never need to exceed a 4D with a 0.07. And 0.03s, I get that question a lot too. Only recommended for mega volume application. So you would not mix in 0.03 fans with this. And the thing is, it just looks weird, even if you were because they're so small and so wispy, and then you get a stick, and it's small and wispy, and then you get a stick, right? So just keep those in mind whenever the max defan rule and the max length rule do not change. And then aftercare and closing. So we all know these steps when we're going through, and these are going to be integral part to saving your business, or starting your business rather. But also it's part of your insurance if you plan to work for yourself. If you're working for anyone else, they all have a system in place that protects you. They have a waiver. You have a consultation form that they have to sign off on and all of that. But you do need to know these guidelines here. So these are not just to help you build your business or your customer service. They're also required for your insurance purposes. So aftercare, you always have to get them an aftercare card. Some people now have gone to the little oh Lord, I went stupid. What are the US what are the codes?
QR code?
QR code. Thank you. I don't know. I'm sorry, y'all. I've been here since 8:30. Yeah, the little QR codes where they can scan it and it takes them to their website. You always need to rebook them, especially if they're a first-time client and we had this question today. So here we call them fills. Some people call them refills. And then in the UK and in Australia, they're called an infill. So just know all three of those are the same things, but you really do need to book them for a fill for 2 weeks if they're if they're a first-time guest. Now, most of the time, people, if they take really, really good care of them and they don't stretch it too far, they can get up to 3 weeks. Yeah, up to. After that, no. Because what they will do is they want to come back to you. And for me, if you're doing a refill, it is no longer a refill if they have not maintained at least 60% of their lashes. If they have not maintained at least 60%, then that is a full set, and you've got to charge what you're worth. But you rebook them in 2 weeks' time, and then ensure the guest has your contact information should they have any challenges. And that usually would just come if there was a sensitivity to adhesive, something went wrong with the gel pad. I've seen, abrasions on the eye, or sometimes you get a lifted base and it kind of pokes at them, and then they'll unfortunately yank that off. And so a hybrid application, easy peasy. It's just a mixture of classic and volume. So that in a nutshell, this one I was going to say week 3 is pretty easy. I think more than anything, it's just focusing on your SEMA or your Cengage if you have it. Everyone should have the invite to SEMA after today, and like I said, I'll go online and talk about that. Now, I did post all of the practicals, but those also live under. Beg your pardon. Those also live under week 3 in Google Classroom. So before I let you guys go, I just wanted to take time and answer any questions, clear up any confusion, because I know I think all of you have my email address, and some of you have contacted me directly.
Where do I admit?
Here we go, at the top. Okay, so I wanted all of you to see a demo of a live demo of gel removal, because I think that makes it a little bit easier. So for you guys at home, we're doing this on a live model. And when was the last time you had your lashes done?
Probably like 2 weeks.
2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you've had quite a bit of fallout after
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks. So I'm going to start by assessing how her natural lashes look. I do have her slightly elevated. That's why I was saying on the beds, you guys can always make sure, I would say just make sure that her feet are not elevated, and then you can prop her up on a couple of pillows, or you could pull one of these chairs. But the reason we want them elevated is because that gel remover has to go right up to the base of their eyelid. And so I don't want that to go back and burn. So I'm going to comb through and just kind of see what we have going on. So of course, always sanitizing my hands. And if you don't feel comfortable doing this as a beginner, of course, I've done lashes for a long time, so I feel comfortable with my tweezers, but you can go ahead and put the gel pads on now when you're going through, because you really have to examine to see what this is. Now, the situations for a gel removal, in the real world, a lot of lash artists do not lash after other people's work, which I completely respect. You want a brand new set, so if they come in from somewhere else and you want that everything to be fresh and new and all your work, that's perfectly okay. Some people do. What I find more than anything, because the majority of my career was done with corrective work, we would have to do removals where they went someplace that the stickies were so bad that there was no way that we were going to be able to lash or refill in between that. So if you want to start that policy with your new, especially after you have a year or so of experience, if you want to start that policy where you're not going to lash after someone else, you absolutely can. Now, a gel removal, usually they're booked off in increments of 30 minutes. But what I will tell you is that you need a price that's set for that. Usually it's $25 to $50 for every 30 minutes. The reason being is because if somebody has made a complete mess out of her lash line, a gel removal can take up to 2 hours. And so you want to make sure that you're compensated for it. So if you'll look up and back for me, and like I said yesterday, we're going to put the gel pads right up underneath her bottom lashes. We're not going to put them on top of the lashes because we don't want to put pressure on that mucosal line and risk opening her eye. Okay, go ahead and close for me. Sticking tag in. Okay. And you always want to ask on that, even whenever you're putting them on, because if something is sticking or tugging, it's going to be uncomfortable. I don't want the eyes to water, because that water will carry the gel remover right into her eye, and you're going to have to rinse it and then start over immediately. Okay, so if you look up and back for me, and see, I just start by propping this in. We bump those right up against the lashes, and then you just flip it down onto the skin. Go ahead and close for me. Any sticking or tugging? Okay. So we want to examine and see exactly what she has going on. I can see it from here. She said that she had these done 2 weeks ago. You can see that they're really, really far out from the base. So making sure that you're only a millimeter from the base will kind of help with that too. But I'm also seeing a lot of extension to extension sticky, and then I'm seeing a little bit of natural lash to her extensions. And he did these?
Yeah, I forgot. I've been 2 weeks ago I got them done here. They were practicing on each other.
Well, with them being new, these bands and with these actually are a little bit heavy for her. So you oftentimes see that too, because you can see how long the length is. And you guys can come around. I don't know. So you can see the length is a little bit too heavy. It's much more than that 4 millimeter rule that we would usually and the size of the fan. This is an absolute never with these, unless they were 0.03s, but even with 0.03s, none of these bases have wrapped around her natural lashes. So these should come off easily. For me, I just always peel through them to see exactly what I can get removed before I go with the gel remover. But see how large that fan is? Way too large with 0.07s or 0.5s. And the bases have T-barred, meaning that there's no natural wrap around the base. This one just came out by itself, so that was ready to release, meaning that was on an adult lash. And you would do the same thing before you did a refill surface. You just go through and pick out anything that's overgrown. If you have some stickies here, it looks like there's excessive adhesive. But I'm not trying to hurt her, so I'm just going to kind of wiggle back and forth. See right here, we got something weird going on. And I'm going to give that a tug just to see if I can get anything to release with your fans. You can usually get them to, but nothing releases. And then this one, do you see how high that is? That's honestly about 5 millimeters up from the lash. So that would have to come off if you were doing a refill. So you want to clean, even if it's your work, when they come in for a refill, you do this. You pick through them. And so if anything is lifted, anything is crisscrossed, they've created some of their own stickies, maybe by doing mascara or not cleaning on a regular basis. And you peel these off before you go in to do your refill so that you kind of clean your canvas. With this, it's barely hanging on for dear life. So I'm gonna banana peel that just left to right, always anchoring. Let's go in. See if I can get behind just as much of it as I can. And then we'll let the gel remover do that. But these are very, very large. For these .07s that they were using, that's what these look like.
I'm not sure.
And of course, we're recording so that they can see this at home, and we'll zoom in a little bit more. But when you're checking someone's lashes to see when they come in, where this becomes a nightmare is because we have these lovely little nail salons to do lashes as though, you know, it's in their scope of practice, or like they're not going to hurt someone. And so we had a situation at the Lash Lounge where there was a nail salon that was doing them. And for an extra $25 fee, they would run a line of adhesive all the way across the base of the lashes so that it would increase retention. And that's where I was flown out to California, and I had to teach an extensive gel removal class because the girls were burning the crap out of their eyes. But we also settled on the fact that anyone who came in from that salon, and they created a really loyal clientele, so it was a win-win for the owner and all of the girls that were there because they knew what they were talking about. But yeah, sometimes it would take 3 hours if we were, and then we had to work with whatever we had left because it was just like this. The work was very heavy, and because everything had been glued together right here along the baseline, any of that natural growth rate, because you have to know that all the lashes are growing at a different rate. So any traction that they have, like they come in with red swollen eyes and they were hurting. And what I can caution you against is when something like this happens, sending them to the ER or saying, hey, we had a lot of people who would do that because the girls were all new. Doctors don't like lash extensions at all. They think that they are the most unhealthy thing for the eye. So I have to appreciate that. But if you send them into the ER, what they will do is they will take a scalpel and they will cut the lash line right at her natural lid. So they will not do a gentle gel removal. And so just letting them know that there are options, but that's really what for you to build clientele too. And then if you speak to them about the importance of this is too heavy, this is too much, this can't be supported, that's how you can gain a clientele. Now, I always keep a paper towel because that's state board, or you can also have, you can choose to put a headband on them. But for the gel removal, the gel remover has to go directly at the base of a natural lash line. And where you guys get a little bit scared of this is a jelly form of acetone, right? So you can put this in a gel ring if you want, but I'm going to tell you, you need a ton of it, especially if they have used way too much adhesive when adhering them. You need a ton of it from a bottle that actually works, unlike this one. Okay, but you just have to be mean to it for a while. And so not using enough, if you've ever seen those little white crystallized pieces on someone's lashes, the reason that you see that is because they've not used enough. So yeah, it's not because the gel remover causes it. So you have to use a thick layer, almost like you're frosting a cake. But remember, this is a jelly form of acetone, so we want to be extreme. Yeah. Yes. So we want to be extremely cautious, and I talk her through this. So she's elevated in this chair, and I'm going to be placing this right at the base of the lashes. So what I tell her is that this will touch the skin. You can feel it may heat up a little bit, but under no circumstances should this burn. If at any time this burns, you let me know immediately, and we will rinse it and then restart it. Okay. You also let them know that this is a silent service, and so we don't tell jokes. We are not funny with this. We're trying to move the gel pad, and keep your eyes closed at all times unless I tell you that you can open them, okay? Mm-hmm. If there's any discomfort whatsoever, though, let me know immediately. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take a very large amount of this, and we're going to roll this starting at the mid of the lash, but we got to get it right up to the base. So you see heavy, heavy, heavy of that application. And when we're doing a chemical, it wouldn't matter if I were teaching to tint lashes or if I'm teaching this. When we do a chemical, we roll away. You don't ever want to roll that up into her eye because her eye is naturally closed and it's going to protect her. But you see, I'm not being irresponsible with it. But you got to use enough. So when you see those little white crystallized things on people's lashes, it's because people are scared to death to use enough of this to actually get it to work. And a gel remover is just that. We can go in if there are a few lashes left and do a manual removal of the nano peel. But remember, if we're doing that, we're putting trauma on the natural lashes. So the whole point of this is that we let this gel remover do its job. So it goes on, and it usually needs to stay on for 3 to 5 minutes, and it will start to break down those blobs. Now, I will let you know, it can kind of heat up the eyes a little because you are getting right there and touching the skin, oftentimes, especially if they've adhered to what I'm talking about as far as burning. If this gets in the eyes, it feels like hellfire. So making sure that they know that there should be no discomfort whatsoever or irritation to the eyes. To see how heavy that is. And I like to use a doe foot applicator. I do not like to use a microfiber because this is going to give us a little more pressure to start wiggling this. You're still doing okay? Yes. Okay, so heavy, heavy layer, and then we just wait. And you can see I dispensed this into a separate little jelly cup. If you choose to use a glue ring, you can. I've seen people do that, but it's really not enough. So I like to use either a jade stone or a crystal or a disposable jelly cup like this. Remember, no double dipping for sanitation. And so I've got my tweezers here. I have my fan. I've got my sanitizer. I kind of have like a full setup, but the doe foot applicator is always my applicator of choice. I've also seen people when they do this because there's gel. I don't like the spray. I do like the gel remover because it acts really quickly. The cream remover, I don't mind if you use it, but the thing about cream remover is it's going to be a lot slower. So if you're wanting to get this done quickly, because time is money whenever you're in the treatment room, a gel remover is going to be the way to go. It's just people, especially whenever they're new, and for students, they like to use the cream remover because you're scared that you're going to get this in their eyes. But you can see she's elevated, so I don't have her laying back and tilted back, so it's not going to roll back into her eye. That's why I like using a little chair like this, or if you have a hydraulic bed, just elevate them. Make sure the legs are up for this. And so what I'll start doing, because I started my application here and it's just been a couple of minutes, I'm going to take the side of this so you can see with that little doe foot applicator. And what I'm going to do is press that down and away. So when we do a removal of any chemical, never ever towards the eyes, right? We're always down and away. We're never trying to push that in towards the eyes. So I'm going to start here and I'm just going to wiggle and see what I can get to come off. There we go. So you can see they should just slide off like that, and that's why you want to have your paper towel there. If they aren't sliding off like that for you, give it more time. But you have to let that gel remover do its job. Now, lashes that are this heavy are very, very irresponsible, especially now she's a young woman. She's got strong, healthy lashes, so they'll grow back. If you do this on someone who doesn't have strong, healthy lashes, you're going to break their lashes off. And so you oftentimes hear is, well, you just need to take a break from lashing. No, if people are lashing you responsibly and not putting too heavy of a fan or too long of a lash on your natural lashes, you should be able to wear them indefinitely. And be patient with this. And you can see I'm not double dipping because I've already dipped into this. I'm only using it on her, but if I had to dispense more, I would dispense it into my cup. So I'm going to put some more on there. They use a lot of adhesive in this outer corner. A lot. Still rolling it out and away from the eye. All of those came up. And do not force them, because if you start forcing these, you're going to pull the eye open, and that gel remover is going to go directly into her eye, and you'll have to rinse immediately. And then start over. I just want to put a little bit more on those, and then just let that set, and then I'm going to check the other side. Now, what I have seen is that kind of like tilt-a-whirl technique that they do, one on the bottom, one on the top. Once you get a little bit more experience and comfort under your belt, you can do that. So that's where you would take these and sandwich them. And this is also if you were doing a bonder, you can put the after bonder on 2 of these or 2 of the little microfibers, and you just sandwich where the bonds would be. But I'm sure that you've seen this technique before where you go underneath and you're kind of tilting them up and away. Be careful with that before you know what you're doing, because what will happen is as soon as you put pressure there, what's going to happen? You're going to open it up. Exactly. So I have no challenge with Ambrielle, who is an excellent lash artist. She would always teach it like that. And I said, well, girl, it's fabulous whenever you do it, but whenever these girls are brand new, what's going to happen? And then she taught it like that one time and never taught it like that again, because she's like, oh, great, and I didn't even think they wouldn't know. There's a lot of stuff going through, and this can be a little nerve-wracking, so be patient with yourself. And you can see she's being good, but this is, you oftentimes get clients, it's just like whenever you're lashing them, that they want to talk. And if they want to talk when you're putting on lash extensions and they can keep their eyes still, well, that's all good, but this is not a time when you would have them talking. So still scooping that out and away. They did a number on this outer corner. Don't laugh. And the other thing that I would tell them is, like, if they started to feel discomfort, like, don't squint, just immediately get a bottle and start rinsing. But you can see why you have to charge for this, because if you don't, some people do a free removal. This, like I said, sometimes can take an hour if it's really, really bad. And so you're not getting paid for that hour that you're in the treatment room. So I would always have a consultant actually see what I was dealing with. And if they're coming in for removal, and then usually that's followed by a full set, but you can't promise that either, because once all of this is gone, I would have to assess her natural lash, what kind of shape they were in, and then I may or may not be able to apply lash extensions to her. Send her home with a growth serum and say, come back and see me in a month.